The stepmother actually pressed her stepdaughter into the water. As the girl struggled to survive, the human-shaped monster on the shore also began to roar. It seemed that something was about to burst out of its body. 2025 is here with the most explosive horror new film. Without further ado, let's start right away. Pepper is a girl with visual impairments, so she is often mocked by her classmates. One day, while waiting for the bus, she mustered the courage to talk to her classmates, but the response she got was ruthless mockery. Fortunately, her brother Andy came in time to defuse the situation for his sister. Although they are step-siblings, their relationship is very close. Pepper went home under her brother's guidance. When Andy was repairing the car, Pepper called out to him. Anxiously, Andy hurried into the house to check, and found that their father had inexplicably died in the bathroom. Before the siblings could recover from their father's death, they were taken to an assessment center. Since they were now helpless, they could only follow the arrangements of the relevant authorities. Sasha gently asked about the siblings, and learned that Pepper had severe visual impairments, only able to see object outlines in faint light, requiring careful adult care, which also made the adoption process more difficult. Fortunately, Laura, a child psychologist, took a liking to Pepper and offered to adopt her. While Andy would be sent to a supervised facility, he could apply for custody of his sister only after turning 18. Andy was stunned upon hearing this, and Pepper was even more emotional, refusing to leave her brother. Sasha hinted awkwardly that Andy had a criminal record, to which he replied that he had been immature before, and vowed to behave. Taking pity on the children, Sasha finally agreed to their request to stay together. The next day, the siblings traveled to their adoptive mother Laura's house with their luggage. Andy pulled up the passenger side sun visor, so his sister could feel some light. Sunlight shone on Pepper's face, as if healing her heart. The destination was remote and hard to find, so it took them a long time to arrive. When they arrived at the house, they found the door unlocked, and deafening music blaring from inside. Laura took Pepper's hand when she saw her, appearing extremely enthusiastic. Strangely, she even made a specimen of her deceased pet dog and placed it in the room, but Andy dismissed it, thinking many people had quirks. Then he noticed the carpet had been specially treated and asked Laura, "Was the carpet prepared for Pepper?" Laura paused, explaining she once had a blind daughter who died by drowning. Andy quickly apologized. Just then, Sasha called to go over procedures, and she asked the siblings to sit down first, but Pepper couldn't stay still and wanted to see the backyard. Andy let her out, but as soon as the door opened, Laura's pet cat dashed outside. Andy whistled urgently to retrieve the cat, and suddenly heard meowing from the pool. When he approached, he saw a bald boy standing in the pool holding the cat, a bizarre scene. Andy noticed the words, "Kathy was here," engraved on the poolside. Laura rushed to the boy, and after retrieving the cat, the boy turned to stare at Andy, who felt uneasy and explained the incident to his sister. Back inside, Laura explained that the boy, Oliver, was her son. Since his sister Kathy's death, he had become withdrawn and developed selective mutism, requiring special care. Laura let Pepper stay in Kathy's room, while Andy was assigned the adjacent room. But when Andy went to the car for luggage, he found a circle drawn with white paint on the ground, though he didn't think much of it at the time. After tidying his room, Andy took out his phone to chat with friends, but quickly put it away when Laura entered. As a child psychologist, Laura immediately noticed the boy's guard, and tried to bond through conversation, but she seemed inexperienced in dealing with adolescent boys. Just then, Pepper called through the wall from next door. Andy sprang up to ask what was wrong, only to find his sister just wanted to play.
Laura!
I'm fine.
Andy was dissatisfied with Laura's prying into his privacy. Laura, on the other hand, saw Andy talking about Oliver with his friend on the phone. Their first conversation wasn't pleasant. After a while, Pepper was in her room remembering her father, not noticing at all that Laura was staring at her outside the door. Late at night, Laura hid in her room watching a videotape. In the picture, a bare-chested man with a big belly was drawing white circles on the ground, as if performing some strange ritual. At this time, Andy was lying in bed, tossing and turning, unable to sleep, constantly thinking about what happened during the day. Suddenly, there was a bright light outside the window. He saw through the window that Laura took Oliver into the Small wooden house, in the corner of the yard. The next morning, Andy was woken up by Laura, and suddenly felt a chill in his lower body. He lifted the quilt and found his pants were wet. Being about to become an adult but still wetting the bed, made him feel very stressed and humiliated. And today was the death anniversary of the sibling's father. Andy was in a daze in the bathroom. Recalling the scene of the day his father died, Pepper gave their father artificial respiration, but Andy just watched coldly from the side. Then they changed their clothes and followed Laura to the funeral. Standing in front of the coffin, Pepper softly asked her brother if their father was at peace. Andy said it was good, but he still didn't dare to lower his head to look at his father. The funeral soon ended, and the guests left. Laura quickly cut a lock of the deceased's hair, when no one was looking. Then she deliberately questioned Andy in front of Pepper, why he didn't say a proper goodbye to his father. According to Laura, the soul remained in the body for months after death, so Laura insisted that Andy go back to the coffin, and forced him to kiss his father's body. Andy was so nervous that he trembled all over and breathed rapidly, but finally, at Laura's urging, he leaned down and kissed his father's forehead. At the same time, Oliver, who was alone at home, acted strangely. He beat the window hard, and after the glass shattered, he walked straight into the yard, completely ignoring his right hand scratched by the glass. He also tried to break open the door of the small wooden house. Finally, he lay down beside the chicken coop and stared at the chickens inside. It was as strange as it could be. Laura and the two planned to drive home. Laura suddenly asked the siblings what they usually like to do, but Andy wasn't in the mood to chat now, and casually replied that he liked the feeling of being drunk. Unexpectedly, after returning home, Laura really let the two minors drink and played the chance game. After several rounds, everyone was in high spirits.
One for Dad.
They drank more and more, dancing to the passionate music, but no one noticed that Oliver was standing outside the window, staring into the room. After the carnival, Pepper couldn't fight off sleep and fell asleep. Originally, Pepper was in a very bad mood, but with Laura's company, she no longer felt sad, so Andy walked over to Laura and sincerely thanked her. At this point, only the two of them were left alone. To ease Andy's psychological burden, Laura suggested talking back to back, so that they wouldn't have to look each other in the eye. Laura first talked about the pain of losing her daughter, saying she had never gotten over the shadow, and had even stayed at the cemetery all night. She was willing to pay any price to bring Casey back to life. After Laura finished speaking, she asked the boy to talk about his relationship with his father. Andy spoke slowly, saying the words hidden deepest in his heart. When he was 8 years old, his father married Pepper's mother, and then turned all his attention to the new family. The teenage Andy deliberately caused trouble at school to get his father's attention, but unexpectedly aroused his father's deeper disgust. His father often dragged him into the bathroom to abuse him, and turned on the faucet to cover his screams with the sound of running water, to prevent Pepper from hearing. After all, his father never hit Pepper, and only vented all his anger on his son. This made the young Andy full of jealousy and resentment towards his sister, which was why he hit the young Pepper. After the conversation, Andy went back to his room to sleep. Laura made sure he was sound asleep before taking a plastic cup, going into the bathroom and filling it with her own urine. Then she poured it all over Andy's pants. She also unlocked his phone, looked through the photo album, and deleted all photos of Oliver. At this point, Laura suddenly heard a cat meowing outside the window, and leaned over to the window to observe. Right away, Oliver was standing in the yard holding a cat. Laura hurriedly took Oliver to the bathroom to wash his body. The next second, the faucet in the bathroom suddenly turned on. A strange whimper also came from Oliver's throat. His reflection in the mirror gradually transformed into a monster. Then the mirror suddenly shattered. The next day, Andy woke up again with the feeling of wetting the bed. He wrapped his pants in a sheet and walked to the laundry room, only to find Laura and Pepper inside. When he tried to take the sheet, Laura snatched it away. She didn't give Andy any face at all, and exposed his bedwetting in front of Pepper. Andy was immediately overwhelmed by a sense of shame.
You try and take a shower.
Okay.
But when Andy pushed open the bathroom door, he hallucinated the scene of his father's death again. This narrow and damp space had become a lingering shadow for him. so he had to take his clothes to the water pipe in the yard to wash. At this time, Oliver was at the second floor window, swatting a fly to death. Andy mistakenly thought he was greeting, but didn't know that Oliver picked up the fly and stuffed it into his mouth. After taking a shower, Andy planned to play with Oliver, but found that he was locked in the bedroom, so he took a fruit knife to pry open the lock and led Oliver to the kitchen. Seeing the boy kept drawing circles on the table, he handed over paper and pen and asked him to write down what he wanted to say, but Oliver still didn't respond. Andy didn't want to force him either. He cut a piece of cantaloupe for Oliver, but soon Andy heard a strange sound. Turning around, he saw Oliver putting the fruit knife into his mouth. Andy hurried to stop him, but Oliver held the knife tightly as if possessed. He had to use brute force to grab the knife, then quickly took his brother out, wanting to send him to the hospital. But when passing the white circle, the boy dug his feet into the ground and refused to leave. Andy had to drag him up by force. Oliver suddenly fell to the ground, screaming wildly and convulsing as if possessed by something. After lifting his clothes, something under Oliver's belly was trembling violently. Finally, the boy weakly said, "Help me." Just at this point, Laura and Pepper, who had gone shopping, rushed home. Laura got out of the car right away and frantically rushed to Oliver's side, shouting. Andy, at a loss, walked back into the house and fell into a state of severe panic. Pepper hugged her brother tightly and kept comforting him, which gradually calmed him down. At this time, Andy saw that the note Oliver had written on had a string of distorted letters. At this point, Laura carried Oliver into the house and played the videotape repeatedly. The scene in the video was still very strange, and the child trapped in the center of the circle looked very much like Oliver, but the boy was no longer silent as usual. He suddenly came to his senses and started talking, questioning who Laura was and what she really wanted to do. Oliver's voice grew louder and louder, so Laura had to play music to muffle it. Then she covered his mouth, drew a circle on his forehead, and Oliver returned to his dull state. At this point, Andy knocked on Laura's door to apologize, but was scolded by Laura for intruding. Even Pepper thought her brother was in the wrong this time. Laura took Pepper into the room, leaving Andy outside. Then Laura even stuffed the haircut at the funeral into Oliver's mouth. Pepper couldn't see clearly what she was doing, and only asked about Oliver's condition. Laura lied that he was fine. Then she came outside with a casual excuse. She drew a huge white circle around the whole house and the surrounding woods. At the same time, Andy plucked up the courage to walk into the bathroom, wanting to wash off the blood on his body, but suddenly someone twisted the doorknob and walked in. The figure of his father was reflected on the glass. When Andy leaned over to check, his father slowly turned around. Frightened by the terrifying look, Andy slipped and hit the back of his head on the ground. He could only watch helplessly as that ghostly face approached. When he woke up again, Andy was in the hospital, listening to the pattering rain outside the window. He suddenly remembered his father's prophecy.
She's gonna die! She's gonna die!
On the other side, Pepper lied in bed, worried about her brother. Then she groped her way to Laura's room and asked to go to the hospital to see her brother, but Laura didn't answer, but pulled Pepper to watch the videotape together. The laughter of a girl came from the TV. It was a video of Casey playing with a companion by the pool. When she was 12, and the companion's name was also Oliver, it was actually the same name as Laura's son. Could this be a coincidence? The heavy rain continued until the next day. Laura visited Andy alone in the hospital, saying he had concussion symptoms and needed to stay in the hospital for observation. Andy kept asking where Pepper was, but Laura didn't answer. Andy seriously told Laura not to let Pepper go out on rainy days, because when Andy was taking a shower yesterday, he seemed to see his father. His father said Pepper would die on a rainy day. After hearing this, Laura hurried to comfort Andy, saying these were all nonsense. Laura also promised Andy that she would keep Pepper indoors, but as soon as she got home, she pulled Pepper into the yard to get caught in the rain. The raindrops on her face made Laura have the illusion that her daughter was still by her side. She hugged Pepper tightly, then changed the soaked Pepper into her daughter's clothes. When she was alive, Laura couldn't help but ask Pepper,
Hey, you can call me Mum if you like.
Maybe.
Laura also styled Pepper's hair in the way her daughter liked when she was alive, and she asked Pepper if she was willing to continue staying in this home. Pepper admitted that she liked it here very much, but after Andy turned 18, she still hoped to live with her brother. At this point, Pepper heard a strange noise. Laura said it was just Oliver passing by. Pepper didn't realize that her words had angered Laura. Laura then took her hand and stretched it towards the freezer. Although the girl couldn't see clearly, she was startled by the cold touch, and what she touched was clearly Casey's body. In the evening, Andy insisted on being discharged from the hospital. Despite the doctor's dissuasion, Laura couldn't force him to stay in the hospital either. After going back home, Andy quickly walked to his sister's room. He felt a little relieved when he saw Pepper was safe, but also had an inexplicable worry. Pepper could always easily gain love. What if she fell in love with this place, and didn't want to leave? At this time, Laura was constantly drawing circles on Oliver's head. The video was playing repeatedly on the TV. In the picture, a man was performing a sacrificial ritual, trying to resurrect his dead wife. Oliver's eyes were already red, combined with his various strange behaviors before. It's not difficult to guess that Laura was trying to resurrect Casey through his body. Late at night, after everyone fell asleep, Laura sprayed herself with Andy's antiperspirant and walked into Pepper's room. The next morning, Andy woke up and just walked out of his room. When he saw the injury on his sister's face, Laura quickly guided Pepper to question Andy if he did it. Andy asked his sister in confusion who exactly did it. Pepper said she didn't see clearly, but smelled her brother's antiperspirant. After hearing this, Laura hurriedly tried to make Pepper believe that Andy, who had been domestically abused by his father for a long time, had a distorted psychology, and was a dangerous person who couldn't control himself. Andy suppressed his anger, and didn't want to lose his temper in front of his sister. He accidentally saw Oliver standing in the heavy rain, and took out his phone to take a photo right away. Laura suddenly started to grab the phone. Andy pushed her down. Laura took the opportunity to pretend to be injured, fell to the ground and shouted, "Andy is attacking me." Then she got up and claimed to protect Pepper.
Oh, well, you protected Kathy.
The conflict between the two gradually escalated. In the chaos, Pepper, who couldn't see clearly what was happening, thought her brother was assaulting Laura, so she stopped Andy right away. Laura successfully alienated the relationship between the siblings. Through psychological manipulation, Andy had to drive to the relevant institution to seek help from social worker Sasha, but she was on leave in the morning. Andy had to wait at the reception desk, but saw Oliver's photo on the wall. The photo was listed under the missing children section. His real name was Connor Bird, and he wasn't Laura's son at all. When Sasha came to work, Andy hurriedly revealed the truth to her, but Laura had already framed Andy for abusing his sister first. Andy and Laura each stuck to their own words. On one side was a minor with a history of violence, on the other side was an emotionally stable psychologist with 20 years of work experience. Naturally, Sasha chose to believe Laura. She thought Andy was framing his foster mother to get custody of his sister. At the same time, after Laura sent Pepper to school, the hungry Connor made a mess of the house. At this point, he looked like a monster. When he saw Laura, he pounced on her and bit her. He tore off a large piece of flesh from her arm in one bite. Laura stood the severe pain, hid in the room and locked the door, but fainted from pain the next second. When Connor saw he couldn't get into the room, he crazily gnawed on the table, even his own arm. A few minutes later, Laura regained consciousness. She simply wrapped her wound with a piece of cloth, and walked out of the room. Seeing Connor standing in the yard, she drew a circle on the glass with her bleeding palm. The boy, drawn by the blood, walked up to the glass. Seeing that he had calmed down, Laura led him into the wooden house where the freezer was stored. On the other side, Sasha was checking Connor's missing person information, and wanted to call Laura to confirm the situation. Andy quickly stopped her, saying that Laura might hurt Pepper if she found out. Andy begged Sasha to go to Laura's house with him. Sasha finally agreed. On the way, Andy called his sister to explain that he had hidden the fact of their father's domestic violence. He didn't want to destroy Pepper's good impression of their father, nor did he want her to see the ugliness of the world too early. Andy admitted that he had hit Pepper when he was 8 years old, but he was definitely not the one who hit his sister last night. But what Andy didn't know was that Pepper's phone was in Laura's hand at this point. She realized that Andy might bring Sasha to the house, so she started cleaning the room right away. That Connor had messed up. Soon, Andy and Sasha arrived. Sasha told him to wait in the car, and went in alone to visit Laura, but Andy quietly climbed into the yard, and saw dead chickens lying on the ground. Then he broke open the door of the small wooden house, and caught Connor gnawing on Casey's body. At this point, Laura was wrapped in a bathrobe, pretending to have just taken a shower. She tried to stay calm and showed Sasha around the house. She also didn't forget to hint to Sasha the fact that Andy abused Pepper. Sasha saw that the house was in order, and found no trace of Connor, so she was ready to leave. Just then, Sasha suddenly noticed blood oozing from Laura's hand, and Andy's shout came from outside the house. Laura suddenly grabbed Sasha's wrist. Sasha finally realized something was wrong, broke free with all her strength and rushed outside. Andy pulled her to the front of the wooden house. The two, having saw the terrifying scene inside, ran towards the car right away. Although Andy dodged in time, he was still seriously injured. After getting out of the car, Laura walked slowly to Andy's side, and pressed him into the puddle until he stopped moving. After changing her clothes, Laura went to the school to pick up Pepper, but as soon as they got home, they heard Sasha's phone ringing. Laura lied that she had changed her ringtone and quickly ran upstairs. She took the phone out of Sasha's pocket and hung up. In a trance, Pepper heard her brother's call. She groped her way upstairs following the sound, and vaguely saw a figure, so she reached out and touched the person's head, but the strange touch made her realize that this person wasn't her brother.
What are you doing here, love?
Pepper asked in confusion who this person was. Laura replied that he was Oliver, but when Pepper pressed about the color of Oliver's hair, Laura subconsciously replied that the boy next door had red hair. Pepper immediately realized that Laura had been lying to her, so she turned and ran, locking herself in the room. At this point, Pepper felt that she had kicked something. She squatted down and touched it, only to find it was a person. When she felt the braces, Pepper was sure that this person was Andy. The girl hurriedly shook her brother, trying to wake him up, but there was no response at all. Just then, Laura opened the door with a spare key, and lied that Andy had been in a car accident, but Pepper could no longer believe her. She grabbed a bottle behind her and threw it at her. Taking advantage of the other's pain, she tried to escape but was grabbed by the wrist by Laura. Pepper struggled with all her strength to break free, but because she couldn't see clearly, she hit a pillar and fainted on the spot. Laura dragged her into the swimming pool filled with rainwater. At this time, Connor, with a rounded belly, also walked in slowly, as if something was about to burst out of his body. For Laura, all she needed to do at this point was to harden her heart and drown Pepper to resurrect her daughter. This heart-wrenching scream awakened the remaining conscience in Laura. Pepper took the opportunity to push her away, and struggled to swim to the shore, but the hungry Connor followed. Pepper kicked the boy hard in the stomach, and turned to flee in panic, but because her vision was blurred, she missed a step and fell to the ground. Straining to get up, Pepper ran towards the distant road. A passing car saw the girl covered in injuries, and stopped to help right away. As for Connor, due to the heavy blow to his abdomen, he vomited up what he had swallowed earlier. He saw the missing person notice on the ground, and regained consciousness briefly. Finally, he mustered up the courage to step out of the white circle. After a period of painful struggle, Connor's long-buried memories gradually revived. Perhaps the passing car driver called the police. In the evening, the police found Connor in the woods.
It's okay, can you tell us your name? I'm Connor. Connor Bird.
Pepper turned on her phone in the car. She heard the last words Andy had left for her. As for Laura, she dragged the remains of her daughter Casey towards the swimming pool. When the police found her, Laura had already ended her own life while holding her daughter. The movie ends here. The horror film Bring Her Back is superficially a thrilling story, but in fact, it deeply explores human nature and maternal love. In the film, foster mother Laura resorts to terrible rituals to resurrect her dead daughter, even harming the foster siblings. The director cleverly uses details to create an atmosphere, such as the circles drawn with blood on the windows, and the blurry videos. Sally Hawkins' performance is superb. In the first half, she's a warm-hearted foster mother, and then her tenderness immediately turns into a sharp blade when Sasha comes to the door. Her emotional outburst is enough to shock the audience with just her eyes. The profoundness of this film lies in its analysis of maternal love. Laura's obsession isn't simply evil. The song she hums while combing her daughter's hair is full of deep affection, but this deep affection has turned into a distortion and extreme. Luckily, Laura finally realized her mistake and turned back. If you like my channel, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe.